Hello guys. Today we're gonna be again talking about Houdini and Blender, right? For who doesn't know, I'm studying Houdini. I'm a Blender user and I challenged myself to learn Houdini, so I'm studying it. And I've been noticing quite of some differences, and I figured that a good way for me to train that, I mean, train better, is making videos and redoing couple things again. So today I've learned about remeshing using nodes in Houdini, and I kind of compare Blender and Houdini. I'm always comparing both, and it's what is interesting in that is that somehow studying Houdini is helping me in getting further on geometry nodes in Blender as well, right? So I kind of, at the same time that I'm getting surprised by the tools that Houdini provides, I'm also discovering different ways of using Blender geometry nodes tools to do something, right? While we still do not have those nodes in Blender. I'm pretty sure that new nodes will come in over and over again as soon as Blender release future versions, and Blender releases are kind of quite frequent, so geometry nodes is being updated a lot. Anyways, today we are gonna talk about Remesh. Why this is so important in Houdini? Because Houdini is all about procedural and simulation, right? And what I'm discovering that I'm not a specialist. I'm far from that for simulation, right? But I'm kind of getting into it now, and I discovered that for simulation, meshes count, the way the mesh is built it count a lot. So you will never use a heavy mesh for a simulation because it's going to screw up your calculations, right? So you have to optimize it. And it comes, this topic brings about remeshing, because you have to convert your mesh into something that the software can use for simulating, for simulation, right? Sometimes for collisions, sometimes for different things. Okay, and I I was back in the days I was trying to figure out a way of having decimate tool inside geometry nodes, and I couldn't figure, right? I couldn't figure it because Blender has this amazing modifier which is called decimate, right? And what this modifier does is kind of reduce the amount of geometry, right? It calculates everything and reduce, right? And that's great. It would be great if we have the same thing here as well as other things inside geometry nodes, but we don't have it. Okay, we don't have that. The reason which would be great is because sometimes you want to create proxies of your model, for example, to be scattered all over a surface, and uh, do not stress your viewports too much. But once it's rendering, it will be showing the full geometry, right? That's how proxy works, right? And sometimes what you can do here in Blender is, let me show you this. What you can do here is converting to convex hull, right? Which will be a mesh that will convert everything. Or you can create a bound box based on your geometry, right? It's a bound that will cover. That's kind of the basic proxies you may have inside Blender, right? I figured out a different way of creating a nice proxy. I will show you that. And that will be by coincidence the way I would remesh the surface in Blender, right? it would be like this. Let's remove this, bring it back our nice little guy here. Okay, let's simplify the viewport. So I will convert that into volume. So now we will have some volume here. You are not seeing that because it wasn't easy to see. So after we convert that into volume, okay, we can even change the amount of voxels. We now convert back, okay, volume to mesh. So now we convert back that into mesh, okay. That's how we would have one of different mesh, okay. But this is still too high. And for example, if you go and try to make it the voxel smaller, you would have it something like this, which is kind of okay, it's better than this, right? But still it's not the same as decimate. Okay, it's not the same as decimate. Okay, you can try to use the adaptive and create something like this, right? Or maybe you have something like this, right? That's how I figured, I mean, how I would create a proxy for an object and have something better than the convex hull. I would even bring the adaptive to maximum. So I will have from this guy, which is, let me see here, which is 525,000 trees to 5,000 trees. Okay, that's much easier to see on your viewport, and then you can show the full geometry once you render. That would be a way. Okay, but if I want to really reduce the mesh, what should I do? What should I do? Okay, the simpler way I would say to do this would be not having the adaptive, right? Not having the adaptive, and use the geometry proximity. Use the main geometry as the proximity, right? And set set the position here. Oh, not here. Set the position of the vertex to match on top of the main geometry, right? So we will go the position here. So that will be more or less the way I would remesh my guy here, okay? And we can always kind of, let's make this bandit less, and we can go here and make it voxel size maybe 1, so we will have a denser mesh, right? But still not as dense as this, or not as dense as this, right? Not as dense as this. It will be way less, oh, sorry, it will be way less dense, okay? Something like this, right? Okay, and we can always change to size as well, the volume to size, and then we will have probably Blender will crash here because I didn't set up this properly. So you know, that's the same idea, just changing the approach for volume to mesh, mesh to volume, and we will have something like this. We can even put it 3, so we will have something like this, which is cool, right? It's not something that we can use this definitely for simulation that will works, in for proxies as well, right? But let me show the options. That's the only option I figured here. And let me show you the options that we may have in Houdini. And you guys will see the difference, okay? So let's go back to Houdini, right? Not seeing this guy, but seeing the other guy. This one, the statue. Okay, the same statue, the same little nice guy. Okay, we have a couple options here. And the main option, oh, there's another option I forgot to mention here in Blender. Okay, let me show you this. Let me say you have this guy. Easiest way would be use merge by distance, right? Merge by distance. And then now you can crank, okay, crank here your, and Blender will weld the vertices, okay, and reduce your mesh. But you see, it will create those artifacts. But you know, honestly, it's not bad if you want just to create a proxy. That's fine. You know, it doesn't matter, right? That's one way. Okay, let's start with the same process here in Houdini. Okay, Houdini has this this node which is called fuse, which will be the same as a merge by distance, right? And what you do here is you crank this guy, and then you will have different, you will reduce your mesh right away. Okay, what I noticed is that here in Houdini you weld the vertex, but you do not have the same artifacts. You still have a pretty bad geometry, but you know, you do not have the same artifacts that you may have here in Blender, right? Look at this. This has 12,000 trees, okay? 12,000 trees. No, this has 53,000 trees, okay? And this guy here in Houdini has 51 polygons. Let me check here in Blender. Polygons. Yeah, 53 faces. And here in Houdini, you have 51 uh, 51 polygons, okay, which will be similar, okay, similar, okay. That's more or less the same process that you have in merge by vertex, okay. That's one of the process, right? The But Houdini has a couple more options. The other option that I would like the Blender has would be the decimate. Houdini has here, and it's called poly poly reduce. Okay. So what this poly reduce is, it's give you a reduction based on the amount of polygons you want to have, or the percentage of polygons. If you, for example, put 5%, this will reduce your mesh quite a lot. It takes some time, but also the reduction is really, really good. You know, it's more or less like the decimate. It's really, really good. Look at this. It preserves lots of details, and it reduces from around 500 polygons, 500,000 polygons to 27,000 polygons. So that's huge. All right, that's huge. That option, unfortunately, it's not available in Blender. It's not available. That will be the decimate modifier, but you can't really do that in geometry nodes, and at least from my personal knowledge, you can't. Maybe there is a way, but you would have to do bunch of connections that I have no idea how to make it work. And here is just one single node, and you have other options here that you can play around with, uh, other things, right? Um, Soft points, you know, I don't know how this would be, you know, maybe that will soft the geometry, I don't know, but you have other options that you can play around here. This is a quite of heavy, right? Heavy option, but this is really good, a really good option. Okay, I like it a lot, and it gives you kind of nice geometry, right? Look at this, nice here, right? While here is pretty much destroyed. Okay, so but it doesn't stop there. We have other options, right? Let's remove these. So this first option here that I give you, this first option here is also available in Houdini. So you can do that by the I'm sorry. You can do that by the same way I did in Blender, using the nodes, volume to mesh to volume, or you can use another node called remesh to grid. Okay, pops are calling. So that's the remesh to grid, and it's the same thing, right? The division size, you can start to crank it down, and then you will see that you have, you know, the same thing, but with just one node. Okay, you can get some remesh on based on voxels. Okay, you have another option, right? Which is, let me show you, quad remesh. Quad remesh. What quad remesh does is basically, the name is already self-explanatory. It remeshes on based on quads. Okay, it remesh based on quads. So whatever you print here, it will be remeshing your file, right? And then you can project by points, things like that, right? But keep in mind that for simulations, doesn't matter. Quad is not the best. The best is trees for simulation. So quad is just if you want to do something on quad, okay? You really want to your mesh to be quad. But quads for simulation are not the best. The best is trees, okay? Triangles, okay? So, okay, let's go to a more complex thing, okay? For example, here in Blender, let me show you the big sheet, this guy, okay? What if you want to remesh this? What if you want to remesh these and remove all the tiny pieces of your geometry? Because I have tiny pieces And if you want to use this guy for simulation, two things, or you will create something on top of it, just the parts, the areas that you want to simulate, or you have to optimize your mesh to simulate, to interact with simulation. Simulation. Okay? But how you're gonna do this here? If you use the merge by distance and you start to crank up here, what happens is like you will start to really destroy your ship, and you will also keep preserving little pieces of your edges and things. It's not ideal, right? It's far from ideal. Okay? So if you try to use the volume to mesh, mesh the volume and volume to mesh, you will end up with something like this, which is very different from the main mesh. Okay, you can go for size maybe, and have something like this, right? Using the adaptive or something. So you have something like this. So, you can't really solve the problem. That's not something that Blender has that option here. If you try to go, for example, in here to use the remesh, the Blender default remesh tool, it doesn't work as I expect, right? You can go to sharp and you can scale down to 3 or 20. You still will not get rid of the small pieces of your jump. This is a better remesh, but it's not the best way. See, it's not the best way because it will remesh everything, so you would preserve the small tiny pieces. Okay, but here in Houdini, let's see this guy, big ship. Okay, big ship, the same ship we have in blue. Okay, so what happened? You see the amount of little pieces here. What we can do is we can use a node called measure node. Okay, what the measure node will kind of measure the area of your object. Okay, so now you can blast, which is destroying, basically, which is blast destroying. It will destroy everything. Okay, but you can go to your measure and instead of use area, use per piece, right? And here in your blast, you are gonna use some code. That's the thing about the Houdini. You have these little codes that helps you here and there, and you can use and you can tell area minus 0.1, for example. And then you start to see that it will start to remove parts of your ship, but that's not what you want. Okay, so what you have to do is simply bring connectivity before your measure. So your measure will measure what the connectivity is show. So the connectivity is a node that calculates the pieces that are connected. Okay, so you go here in your connectivity and you bring this, instead of points you bring to primitive, so it's not calculating points but the geometry. So now it's working, okay, because you are telling to the attribute class that this is about the primitive. It's taking all the connected pieces on primitive, and then your measure is taking the area from the class, which is you are saying here class, that's the class, okay, and here is taking per piece from class, from whatever is connected, okay. So and then it's blasting it, it's blasting. What is blasting? Is blasting the group. Which group? Area, right? The area group, okay. Area, okay, is taking the error whatever is less than 0.1. But if you, what happens if you crank this and if you put whatever is less than 10, for example, you see, and then it will start to remove anything, you know, from your sheet that is less than 10. If you put maybe 30, okay, so you would have a very clean geometry. That's another way you can cleaning up your geometry for simulation, okay, for simulation. So I show you different ways of remesh your model, and also showing you this way, which is a way that you can clean up your mesh for use that the cards for use that on simulation, okay. So that's pretty much it, right? And I hope you guys like it. That's you can see, you can see here that Houdini has more refined tools that helps you to remesh your model, right? And there is a remesh node as well, which is not the remesh grid, but the remesh node. And I forgot to show you. And there is one more option, right? So let's say we have this guy here, and we are just going to use a remesh tool. Okay, and then it's going to bring the remesh. It calculates more, of course, and you can reduce the interactions, so it will start to bring more information about your mesh. Okay, you can, and you can use those options to see how far you can go with the details. Okay, you will see, okay, that's not what I want. Okay, you can go smoothing it. And in the case of this guy, is taking this amount of time because it's a lot of different pieces to remesh. So that's not ideal, right? That's not ideal. And it will not, I wouldn't use this approach here. I wouldn't use this approach here. I will use something else that I showed you before, because these would not give me the options that I would like to have it. You know, uh, I can use adaptive, and it will bring the adaptiveness option to my mesh, right? But you see, it takes time. It takes time to calculate. So for me, that's not the best. I wouldn't be using this, honestly. Blender is still hanging here. I will close it. And Houdini now is also hanging here because of my calculation. So that's not an option that I would use for this guy because it's a geometry with lots of different pieces. I would use poly count, reduce poly count, or a fuse or remesh grid. All the options that I gave it to you before. But for example, for a rock, a noisy rock, that would may be a good option. You know, remesh using that option, that would, you see how it recalculates the mesh and it adaptive the mesh, right? If you go here and see how it is here, you see it reduce, but the calculation is too long, right? It reduced from, let me show you here. No, actually, it remesh and increase the polygon. It increased the polygon. You see, it remesh increasing the polygon. So that's not ideal for this guy. Let me remove it here. And I will show you just one more option, right? So you guys can see what I'm talking about. Let's cast, for example, sphere, sphere here. Let's use instead of mesh polygon, and let's crank this, something like this, something like this, right? Let me put the frequency around, man, I don't know, 50. Let's go more, 200, something like that. Let's make it very high poly. And here we will use a mountain. We could use a node called noise, which is the same as mountain, but I'm gonna use mountain just to show you. For example, that's the rock, okay? Very, very high poly. In this case, we can go and use poly count, reduce poly count, and Houdini would try to reduce the poly count here, okay, and maybe put, I don't know, 5% of the poly count, and then it will calculate everything and try to reduce it, and it will make a great job, but it will reduce the whole thing, everything. I'm not seeing the option of adaptiveness here, okay? So it would reduce a lot. But if we use instead the remesh that didn't work in the other option, let me see. So say, oh, that sucks. Okay, that's really sucks, right? But if you use adaptive, so the mesh would try to get the will try to get the details. You know what I mean? It will try to preserve the details of your mesh. You can even go higher on your iterations, so you can kind of even make it less poly count, okay? And but the adaptiveness would still try to preserve the mesh, okay? You can go to relative density and increase it. So as far as you increase, you will see the the options, how it goes, okay? It will increase the amount of geometry, but if you cranks down, you see that it will flat the areas that in which we do not have that much details, right? So look at this. So it reduces a lot, preserving like lots of details on our mesh. Look at this. But it came from 800,000 polygons to 94,000 polygons. So almost 8 times smaller than the previous one. And that's how, in this case, this works well. This works really well, okay? And adaptiveness, using the adaptiveness, it works really well. And you know, you can even go to 59,000. Look at this. Preserving the details of your mesh. You go from 800,000 to 59,000. Okay? Almost 16 times smaller than the other mesh. And still having a nice mesh. Of course, you will not have all the details, but you still have lots of details. Okay, so each case is one case. It's good that Houdini has all those options. I would like to see Blender having those options as well. Okay, I hope you guys like this video. If you like, subscribe my channel and thumbs up. If you don't like, thumbs down. If you are interested on some geometry nodes, and I'm talking about geometry nodes too, geometry node tools in Blender that will help your life in modeling. It will make your life easier, and not just modeling, but other things as well. You check it out on my channel on Blender Market and Gumroad, and you will see very interesting things there. I will put the links below, and yeah, I will be doing more of these videos. Like, I know the video is long, but that's for me also to train a bit English and exercise my Houdini learning skills, and I hope you guys like it and help you as well as helping me. Okay, see you soon guys, bye bye.